the topic for today's satsang is a sort of, let's say, a little bit of a fun topic in a sense. It's taken from the words of Yogananda ji, where he tells us, don't be an unwillingness monster, and make sure that you don't be an unwillingness monster. And, this topic of willingness, as we were reading, is one, of course, that we try to emphasize, isn't it, in our own spiritual training, right from the moment that we come onto the path. If most of us, if we did even a little bit of introspection in the beginning, what we probably noticed is there's a ton of resistance that comes up, isn't it? It's like just to do something simple like meditate 5 minutes a day. In level 1, it was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? And then slowly by slowly, you start to learn to cooperate, isn't it, with what the Guru is asking of us. And in that point, this concept of willingness and unwillingness monster comes in very handy, because we need to learn to cooperate with the divine flow that's guiding our lives. Master said, Yogananda ji said, if you shut me out, how can I come in? And the more we block with our resistances, with our likes and dislikes, no, I don't like this, I like that, I want to do this, I want to do that. The more we do that, I'm not going to do this, not this one thing, Master. Suddenly we feel that flow of grace, that flow of blessing being blocked sometimes, isn't it? And so paying attention to that with ourselves can be a very useful tool to keep moving forward spiritually. Like Swamiji also says here, unwillingness is a satanic pull, it's a satanic effect on the consciousness. So what do Master and Swamiji say about this? They actually have a lot of fun with this topic. And I wanted to bring in a little bit of that. So again, it's also good to bring in humor, to laugh at ourselves sometimes and see some of these follies. So you don't take yourself too seriously as well, but you learn to kind of keep working with that energy. So in the New Path, written by Swamiji, there's this lovely story of the stained glass windows, which you may all remember, where Master basically wanted to put stained glass windows in the church he was building. And he asked Divine Mother showed him in meditation where to find those stained glass windows. This is in America. And so he went to that shop, and the shopkeeper's assistant was there. And I love Master's use of language. He asked him for the stained glass windows, and Master said, the guy replied, boss, say no. His body stooped with lifelong unwillingness. Must be no. Meaning to say there's no windows here, the boss says, so maybe there's not, and just his body stooped with lifelong unwillingness. And it's just so fun to see. And then, of course, Master had to bribe him and offer him some money if he would just go and check. And sure enough, he went and checked, and there were the stained glass windows. There's a lot in this story, isn't it? And just to see again, first of all, that body stooped with unwillingness to check ourselves, let's say some opportunities in front of us. Oh, is my body stooping, or do I need to sit straight, take a deep breath? Yes, Master, and train ourselves to do that almost. And it is, even though it seems like just something simple, even just the awake and ready exercise. Swamiji says, if you can't get out of bed, jump out of bed and start doing the super conscious living exercises. Wake up with that burst of energy. They seem like little things, the things we would maybe teach children. But in fact, that's a great way to work with ourselves. And even how Master worked with this person, And I was thinking about another aspect of this story. It comes in with our education for life principles that Swamiji outlined for children, but also for all of us adult children who can really benefit from this, which is work with the energy of the child, work with your own energy. So sometimes a child is heavy. And so what's the next thing you can give them? In this case, Master's offering of money had to be the way that that guy had to move out of himself. It became a motivation. But sometimes I may not work for a light child if your energy is light. So what can you do to do that? Maybe the awake and ready exercises, maybe let's try this, let's be creative in this way, using those principles of energy and working with ourselves in that way can really help us turn around the flow of energy in us. And so to just enjoy that flow as well, no? So Naya Swami Tai, who's actually done all the work in building education for life, he has a lovely book. And it's very fun, obviously, to read all of his experiences in the classroom and working with children. But he just says about this topic of unwillingness, a couple of things I thought may be relevant here. One time in the classroom, he kind of went in and he saw that there was a bit of unwillingness going on, and this low energy, stuck energy. And so his first instinct was how all of us were brought up probably in our schooling is you get scolded, punishment. If you're not going to do this, here are what all the things that you are going to be punished or stand in the corner or whatever it may be. So he tried that approach of just the sort of more strong, but immediately he felt he didn't enjoy that's not really helpful in this scenario. And so what he realized then was you need to find ways to change the energy of the child rather than trying to force them in a certain way. And from that came a series of things, like, for example, I was talking about the awake and ready exercises, of giving the children an opportunity to try and see, how is it when you do this versus when you do that? How is it? How do you feel when you share with each other versus when you don't? And very beautiful principles they have applied. But there was one teacher that he writes about who kind of walked into the classroom, and just from the entrance, from the door of the classroom, the teacher looked in and saw this unwillingness energy there in the class, kind of lethargy. And this teacher, not wanting to deal with unwillingness that day, just from the door came up with an idea and said, okay, so today's class is going to start with a game of catch me if you can. And the teacher just ran, and the students kind of got shocked out of their lethargy and they ran after him. And you see, then the whole energy had changed, isn't it, of the children. And again, these are little ways which are so brilliant in our education for life system. I think many of us are like, oh, why wasn't I born in an education for life school, isn't it? And we see Loveleen over there, which are doing activities with the children, with the families of the community on Saturdays. And it's already, those things are so helpful. We see the energy of the children changing, isn't it? Just once a week getting together and being able to explore some of these, but to use these as in ourselves as ways to work with it. And, I'll just end on another thing that Swami Kriyananda talks about, unwillingness. And he also brings in a lot of humor, and he says, we all may know people who are so stooped with that unwillingness, like even to get up and answer the doorbell, it seems like, well, let me tell you exactly what he says. It seems like they weave a heavy sigh as if off to meet their martyrdom. Just to get up and just, or to make a cup of tea, and to that point where he says that unwillingness, if we watch in ourselves, even the simplest little duties start to seem like enormous giant mountains of task, isn't it? And then what to say of higher, bigger things like working with our own karma, working with our spine, meditating, sitting straight. All of these take a certain willingness and cooperation from us, isn't it? And so watch those unwillingness monsters in ourselves and just pay attention to those. And to end, I'll actually just share, just again, some fun qualities of what is unwillingness. And this is written, actually outlined in our flower essences, one of them. And so these are the negative aspects that can be released as a result of also the flower essences, which can help you. So some qualities of unwillingness are procrastination, blocked energy, unresponsiveness. So just seeing it in ourselves and maybe people around us, dragging one's feet. Have you ever experienced just sort of even your foot doesn't move off the ground much? Resistance, you feel your energy just stuck. Lethargy, sluggishness,
and needing stimulants. I like that. I have a few friends whose always thing is, let's go for a coffee. It's like, needing stimulants, and it's just, again, have fun with these as well, where we can help each other. Just, let's do instead some of these exercises. Let's try to sit up straight. Let's breathe and just try to use more of these aspects. And again, Swamiji said, what are some of the positive ones? Of course, we know energy, enthusiasm, say yes to life. Sister Gyanamata, say yes, make it snappy. All these come with willingness, isn't it? Of just, all right, let's do this. Living fully in the moment. And there's this one devotee, we played football once, and this devotee particularly is the example of willingness, you might say, is really just very full of enthusiasm, joy. And we were running on the football field. This was just a year ago or so. And, now we've become a little out of shape and, aging. And so we are running on the football field and the ball is going and I'm saying, come on, get the ball, get the ball. And I always remember this devotee's response, like running after the ball, but the ball is just gone ahead. And then this devotee shouted out, the mind is willing, but the body is not cooperating. And it was just a perfect moment of willingness, even in that, to try to express willingness. I'm going to try, Master, and just let's make sure we have that spirit with us all the time, because it will take us very, very far on the spiritual path. Swamiji says, do everything with a sense of privilege, with a sense of joy. And that's the spirit of willingness as well. So I will now invite Baraquiel.
Thank you so much. Shamini, that was lovely. And, talking about football, it always reminds me, I always was amazed about myself that before I came to the path, that at some point I had two jobs and sometimes I had to do them back to back. But if people asked me to go play football afterwards, I could easily go and play football for hours. And, I was the one who would run the most just because it was something I really, really enjoy doing. And still, it's funny because the thought of playing football is one of the few things that gets me excited sometimes, like it gets me very enthusiastic. I don't know why, but it's fun to contemplate what Swamiji said in this reading that, most people are willing or unwilling according to their likes and dislikes. And if you just think for a moment about that, you realize how true it is. How if somebody asks us to do something that we like, or first say, oh yeah, of course I will do, and yes, let's do it energetically, let's do it joyfully. And if they ask you something you perhaps you don't like to do, well, even if you are willing, okay, fine, I'll do it. The energy is not flowing so much. And the importance of what he said here, that willingness has to be cultivated, because if not, we tend to go more towards unwillingness. Why? Because it's easier, probably. It demands less from us than being willing. And if you think about it even more, it has to be cultivated so much that even for things that we like doing, we have to practice willingness. Because, if the body is a little tired or you are a little more lethargic, even if people ask you to do something that you usually would like to do, you can more easily start saying, no, not today, it's okay. Just because of that bias that we may have towards some willingness, towards, not wanting to move. So I like very much how Swamiji tells us that it is something that must be cultivated consciously. And I think that's something that we really have to take into heart, especially if you feel that you are struggling with this unwillingness, that the unwillingness monster is very, very close to you all the time. But don't feel bad, because as Shamini was saying too, we all have some things that we are very willing, sometimes some things are medium willing, sometimes that we are not willing at all. And it's just a normal thing, because again, it tends to go with our likes and dislikes. Of course, on the spiritual path, we try to go beyond likes and dislikes into what needs to be done. And I know this is a very extreme example, but how the masters are just willing to do so much. Someone puts this visualization for all of us that, in the astral or causal realm, or perhaps even beyond all the universes, that God is telling, those souls who are willing to come back down as avatars, say, okay, we need now someone to go to planet Earth once again. And this life, you will live only 33 years, because the first 30 years will be fine, but then the next 3 years, when you actually come and start teaching my teachings, people will be opposed to you and you will be crucified after some time. Who is willing to go? Who will be willing to go for that? From perfect bliss all the way down to earth to be crucified after you spread the teachings for 3 years that we know of. I mean, the amount of willingness that the masters take in order just to be on this plane is amazing. Like, we have no idea how much they sacrifice or how much they give to us. So, of course, that is a very, very extreme example. But again, the example of the masters is always good because they give us a direction, isn't it so? And all great saints and all wise people, you will see that they are very willing to really do what is needed in life, and they don't care so much whether they like it or not. We know that Swami Kriyananda, his first thing was that he wanted to be a hermit. And he also wanted to share the teachings with all, but more than anything, he wanted to be a hermit. But because he knew that he had to do something different, he was willing to do it. So I wanted to read a little something that Swamiji wrote here that I found very interesting. In normal everyday life, the will manifests itself as because we know that willingness is an aspect of willpower, basically. And so he's saying, in normal everyday life, the will manifests itself less overwhelmingly as willingness. Willingness was, above all, what Jesus demanded of his disciples. His very teaching said yes to life, especially to a life lived in God. The magnetism of his presence was constant affirmation of the rightness of living for God. Willingness on the spiritual path means to say yes to God's will. By this attitude, one attunes himself ever more deeply to God's consciousness, thereby attracting unceasing blessings and joy. So, and we all know, I like very much how he said that on day-to-day life, willpower expresses less overwhelmingly as willingness. And we know that in the energization exercises, Swamiji was very clear. The greater the willingness, the greater the flow of energy. Substituting the word will for willingness there, and how related these two are. But when we are talking about deceiving the unwillingness monster, I think that word deceiving is very important to get us started now, because we all want to do something like, oh, I want to get up early, but I put the alarm on snooze all the time. My will is lacking. Oh, I want to energize, but my will is lacking. And I was thinking, how can we deceive the unwillingness monster? The best way to do it is to get started, to trick yourself a little bit. Say, okay, well, I don't feel like energizing. That unwillingness monster is telling you, I don't feel like energizing. You just that's okay. We don't need to energize. But, we have a guru and all that. Let us at least do 5 exercises, And then you start doing 5 exercises, and by the end of 5 exercises, you do the whole set, because you are deceiving the unwillingness monster. It happens to me sometimes that, we have this beautiful meditation room, but even, when I'm relaxing, perhaps watching something or reading something or whatever it may be, And I think, I should go meditate in the meditation room and not on the bed. And, sometimes I like, but, I'm comfortable already and I had to get up. And when it was cold, especially, it didn't feel as much as going to the meditation room itself. But I always say that if I just sit down, if I just go and sit down, then I can stay for sometimes a long time, just because I put that first step. So don't tell yourself, oh, I'm going to go meditate for 3 hours. Just if you find that your mind is not as willing and you're not able to summon up the willpower, say, okay, let me just go and get started, if nothing else. We have no idea how important this little principle of just get started is, because then you open up the flow of energy. And if you open up the flow of energy even that much, many more things can happen. Another little thing that can help us is, I would say, don't neglect the what do you call the power or the importance of being physically active. Shamini was saying about the superconscious living exercises, and you notice that the superconscious living exercises, they have a lot of movement and vigorous movement, especially the first two, which are how we start, but all of them have a lot of movement. It's because, let's face it, we are in this physical body, and sometimes in order to use the will to get us started, we need to move the body a little bit to get the energy going in whatever way we can. So if you feel too ashamed or silly doing the superconscious living exercises, at least do some sort of physical movements, to get the energy going. That already will be a great power. And finally, I don't know if any of you has seen that movie of Jim Carrey called Yes Man. Have you seen it? I mean, it's a very silly movie, of course, it's Jim Carrey, but basically this man's life is going very badly, miserable. He himself is very unwilling and, very lethargic. And in order to change himself, he goes to this kind of religion that basically says that you have to say yes to everything, like literally everything. And, he starts doing that, and his life gets transformed completely. He learns like Korean, he learns the guitar, he learns to fly an airplane, and he himself becomes very, very joyful. Then, of course, at the end, he realized that saying yes to everything got him into troubles as well. And, but I like that idea of first saying yes, as Shamini was saying of Sister Yanamata. And it's something that it will be, if you are feeling that you have troubles with unwillingness, practice for a week saying yes to everything that people ask you. Maybe not if it's having a new responsibility or something like that you may not be able, but other things, like for example, your spouse asks you, oh, do you want to do this? Say yes. Don't think about it. Your children ask you for something that, of course, as long as it's not something unhealthy for them, and say yes. Or your mind asks you to do something positive, say yes. Practice for this week, perhaps saying yes to everything that comes to you. Again, that will not add necessarily a big responsibility that will change your life completely or something like that. But practice a little bit of, I know Master didn't want yes men, and I'm not telling you to do that, but just for a week, in order to increase the flow of willingness, say yes to all these new ideas that may come to you. And I will practice it as well, but don't abuse it. And you will see that actually your life changes because the flow of energy changes. And when that flow of energy changes within us, then the masters can change us. And when the master can change us, then our meditation, then everything that we do becomes blessed. The first step is to say yes. The second step is to bring that inner joy and inner awareness into everything we say yes to, so that then it becomes a very blessed activity that will really just remind us of that inner joy that is within all of us. All right.